I worked the closing shift at a small supermarket in northern Ohio during my first year of community college. It wasn't a big chain, just one of those neighborhood grocery stores that had been around forever, with flickering fluorescent lights, uneven tile floors, and aisles that always smelled faintly of cleaning chemicals and spoiled produce. I was 19, broke, and desperate for hours, so I volunteered for late shifts whenever I could get them. The store officially closed at 10 p.m., but closers stayed until around 11 to clean, restock, and lock everything down. Most nights were boring. Quiet. Almost peaceful once customers were gone. But the night this happened was different from the moment I clocked in. The automatic doors kept opening even when no one was walking past them. I noticed it around 9:20 p.m. I was restocking canned soup when the doors slid open with that familiar mechanical hiss. No footsteps. No shadow. No one standing there. I walked over, peeked outside. Empty parking lot. Just a few cars under buzzing streetlights and a light mist hanging in the air. I shrugged it off. Old building. Faulty sensors. But then it happened again. And again. By 9:45 p.m., the doors had opened 6 times without anyone there. My manager, Rick, laughed it off when I mentioned it. Probably mice or temperature change, he said. Relax. At exactly 10 p.m., we locked the doors and flipped the sign to closed. Rick left first, he always did, leaving just me and one other employee, Jenna, a cashier who'd been there for years. The store felt different the second the doors locked. Not spooky, just wrong. Too quiet. Even the refrigerators seemed louder, humming unevenly, like they were struggling. Jenna went to the back office to count drawers. I stayed out front to mop the aisles. Around 10:20 p.m., I heard a cart move. Not roll, shift. A metal scrape against tile. I froze. Jenna. I called. No answer. I listened. Nothing. I told myself it was my imagination and kept mopping, but my eyes kept drifting toward aisle 6, the paper goods aisle. That's when I saw it. A shopping cart. Halfway down the aisle. I hadn't seen it there 5 seconds earlier. The wheels weren't moving. It was just there. I walked closer, my heart thumping harder with every step. The cart was empty except for one item. A single package of raw chicken. No bag. No receipt. No condensation. Just sitting in the child seat, like someone placed it there carefully. That's when I noticed the footprints. Wet. Bare. Leading away from the cart. They didn't go toward the doors. They went toward the stockroom. I backed away slowly and called Jenna again. Still no response. My phone buzzed. A text from Jenna. Did Rick come back? I typed back with shaking hands. No. Why? 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. Then she replied. Someone is in the office hallway. Before I could respond, the lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then the store went dark. Not completely, emergency lights kicked on, bathing everything in dim, sickly yellow. I heard footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Coming from the stockroom. I ducked behind the customer service desk, barely breathing. A figure emerged into the glow. A man. Late 40s maybe. Tall. Thin. Wearing a store jacket. My stomach dropped. It was Rick's jacket. But it wasn't Rick. The man's face was pale and sunken, like he hadn't slept in days. His eyes were wide, unfocused, darting around like he was looking for something he'd lost. He sniffed the air. Actually sniffed, long, exaggerated breaths. Then he spoke. Softly. Toilet papers moved. My blood ran cold. He dragged his fingers along the shelves as he walked, knocking items over one by one. He didn't seem angry, more disappointed. like the store had failed him. I heard a muffled thump from the office area. "Jenna." The man tilted his head. "Don't hide," he said calmly. "The cameras don't work after 10. That's when I realized something horrifying. He was right. Rick always turned them off to save power. The man stopped near the end of the aisle and slowly turned his head directly toward my hiding spot. He smiled. Not wide. Just enough. "You're still here." I ran. I sprinted for the emergency exit near the dairy section, my shoes slipping on wet tile. Behind me, something crashed to the floor. He didn't chase me. He walked. Heavy footsteps. Unhurried. Like he knew there was nowhere to go. I slammed into the emergency door and pushed. Nothing. Locked. From the outside. That's when the PA system crackled to life. Static. Then breathing. Then his voice. "I lock them early now," he said. "Safer that way." I don't remember screaming, but my throat burned. Police arrived 15 minutes later after Jenna managed to trigger a silent alarm in the office. They found the man hiding inside the walk-in freezer. Still alive. Still smiling. Turns out he was a former night employee who'd been fired years earlier for loitering after hours. They never checked the crawl spaces above the ceiling. I quit the next day. The store closed permanently 3 months later. They said it was due to maintenance issues. But locals say the automatic doors still open at night. Even though no one's been inside for years. I worked the night shift at a supermarket for almost 2 years, and for most of that time, nothing ever happened. It was boring, repetitive, and honestly kind of depressing, but it paid the bills while I was in community college. The store was a large chain grocery store on the edge of town, the kind that stayed open until midnight. After closing, a skeleton crew stayed behind to clean, restock, and prep for the morning shift. On weeknights, that crew was usually only 3 or 4 people. This happened in February of 2021. It was a Wednesday night, cold and wet outside, and business had been dead. By 11:45 p.m., the store was completely empty. The automatic doors were locked, the lights were dimmed slightly, and the usual background music was turned off. That silence always felt strange. A grocery store isn't supposed to be quiet. That night, it was just me and my supervisor, Dan. Dan was in his mid-40s, tired all the time, and spent most nights in the back office doing paperwork. My job was to restock the dry goods aisles and face the shelves so everything looked neat in the morning. Around 12:10 a.m., Dan told me he was stepping out to smoke and asked me to finish aisle 7 before taking my break. I remember that specifically, because aisle 7 was canned food, long, narrow, and badly lit at night. As soon as Dan left, the store felt different. Not scary at first. Just heavier. Like the building itself was listening. I grabbed my cart and started restocking. About 10 minutes in, I heard something that made me stop. Footsteps. Not mine. They were slow. Careful. Coming from the other end of the aisle. I assumed Dan had come back in early, so I didn't look up right away. I just said, "You back already?" No answer. The footsteps stopped. I looked down the aisle. No one was there. The shelves were fully stocked, blocking any view into the cross aisle, but I should have seen someone walking away. I hadn't. I felt a small jolt of unease, but I shook it off. Old buildings make noise. Your brain fills in gaps when you're tired. I went back to work. A few minutes later, I heard it again. This time, it wasn't footsteps. It was the sound of a can rolling across the floor. Metal scraping lightly against tile. I turned and saw a single can of soup slowly rolling out from the bottom shelf on the opposite side of the aisle. It came to a stop right in the middle. I stared at it for a few seconds, waiting for something else to happen. Nothing did. I bent down, picked it up, and put it back. That's when I noticed something that made my stomach tighten. The can was warm. Not room temperature. Warm, like it had just been held. I stood up slowly and scanned the aisle again. Still empty. I pushed my cart out of aisle 7 and headed toward the front of the store, suddenly very aware of how alone I was. Dan's office light was still off. His car was still gone. That meant I was completely alone inside the building. I considered calling him, but before I could, I heard something new. A cart rolling. Not fast. Not sloppy. Slow. Controlled. Somewhere near produce. I stood frozen, listening as the sound echoed through the store. Wheels clicking softly as it changed direction. Someone was pushing a shopping cart. I walked toward the front, trying to convince myself it was Dan messing with me. But the doors were locked. No customers could have gotten in. As I rounded the corner near the bakery, I saw it. A cart. Moving on its own. At first, I thought maybe the floor was uneven. But then I saw what was pushing it. A man. He was standing behind the cart, hands on the handle, slowly walking forward. He was tall. Very thin. Wearing a dark jacket and jeans. His head was tilted downward so I couldn't see his face. I felt my heart slam against my ribs. "Sir," I said, my voice shaking, "the store is closed." He didn't respond. He just stopped the cart. Then, very slowly, he turned his head toward me. I still couldn't see his face clearly. The lighting in produce cast shadows upward, hiding his eyes. "You shouldn't be here," I said. His mouth moved. But no sound came out. Then he smiled. It was wrong. Too wide. Too slow. Like he was practicing. I took a step back. "Who are you?" I asked. He pushed the cart forward 1 inch. That was it. I turned and ran. I sprinted toward the back, my shoes slapping loudly against the tile. I didn't look behind me. I didn't want to know if he was following. I burst into Dan's office and locked the door behind me. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone trying to call him. Before he answered, something hit the door. Not a bang. A knock. Slow. Deliberate. 3 times. I held my breath. Then a voice came through the door. Calm. Quiet. Right on the other side. I just wanted to shop. I whispered into the phone, "Dan, someone's in the store. You need to call the police. Now." The handle began to turn. Not aggressively. Just testing it. Dan yelled through the phone for me to stay locked in and said police were on the way. The handle stopped moving. Then footsteps walked away. Slow. Unhurried. 10 minutes later, police arrived and cleared the store. They found nothing. No man. No forced entry. No unlocked doors. But when they checked the security cameras, everything changed. The footage showed me restocking. Then the can rolling. Then the cart. But the man? He never entered through the doors. At 11:58 p.m., the cameras caught him standing in aisle 7. Just standing there. Watching me. They couldn't see where he came from. And on the footage, right before I ran, he looked directly into the camera. And smiled. I quit the next day. The store manager told me, off the record, that this wasn't the first time someone had seen him. Employees called him the closer. Because he only shows up after midnight. And the cameras never show him leaving. I worked at a supermarket during my last year of college, mostly closing shifts. It was one of those large chain stores on the edge of town, the kind surrounded by empty parking lots, warehouses, and nothing else. During the day it felt normal. Bright lights. Families. Music playing softly over the speakers. At night, it felt like a completely different place. The store officially closed at midnight, but employees stayed until 1:30 a.m. cleaning, restocking, and counting registers. I'd been there about 4 months when this happened, and nothing strange had occurred before, just the usual weird customers, shoplifters, and the occasional drunk wandering in 5 minutes before closing. That changed one Thursday night in early November. We locked the front doors at exactly 12 a.m. My manager, Dave, announced over the intercom that the store was closed and the last customers left. We did our usual sweep, checking aisles and bathrooms to make sure no one was inside. Everything looked clear. I was assigned to restock the back half of the store, canned goods, cereal, baking supplies, while 2 other employees cleaned the front. Dave went into the office to finish paperwork. The store lights dimmed slightly, switching to night mode. The music shut off. The only sounds were the hum of refrigerators and the faint squeak of cartwheels being pushed back into place. That's when I heard footsteps. At first, I assumed it was one of my co-workers. But the footsteps weren't rushed or casual. They were slow. Deliberate. Heavy, like someone dragging their feet slightly as they walked. I peeked down the aisle. Empty. I shrugged it off and kept stacking cans. A few minutes later, I heard it again, closer this time. Footsteps stopping at the end of the aisle. I called out, "Hey, you need help back there." No response. I walked to the end of the aisle and looked out. The main aisle was empty. No carts. No co-workers. Just long rows of shelves fading into shadow under the dim lights. A chill ran through me, but I told myself I was being paranoid. Then the PA system crackled. Not the usual ding, just static. And then a voice came through. Low. Calm. Male. "I know you're still here." I froze. It wasn't Dave's voice. And it wasn't any of my co-workers. I stood there, heart pounding, staring up at the speaker above the aisle. The voice spoke again. "Don't worry. I won't bother you long." I ran toward the front of the store. Dave was in the office with the door open, counting cash. I burst in and told him what I'd heard. He frowned and said, "That's impossible. The PA's locked. Only management can use it." He checked the cameras. Every aisle looked empty. Except one. A camera near aisle 12 showed a tall figure standing perfectly still between the shelves. Not moving. Not shopping. Just standing there, facing the camera. My stomach dropped. Dave zoomed in. The man was wearing dark clothes, hoodie pulled tight around his head. His face was angled downward, shadowed. He hadn't moved in several minutes. Dave grabbed his radio and said, "Hey, whoever's still in the store, you need to come to the front right now." The man didn't move. Dave called the police, then told us to stay together near the registers. We locked the office door and waited. That's when the lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then half the store went dark at the back half. Aisle 12 disappeared into shadow. The footsteps started again. But this time, they weren't walking. They were running. Fast. Heavy. Echoing between the shelves. The camera showed nothing. But we could hear it, circling the aisles, stopping suddenly, starting again, like someone deliberately trying to be heard. Then the PA crackled again. "I don't like cameras," the voice said. "They make things dishonest." Every camera feed went black at once. We heard something slam hard against a metal shelf in the back. Cans clattered to the floor. One of my co-workers started crying. Then there was knocking. Not at the front door. From inside the store. A slow knock, knock, knock. On the office door. We all froze. The handle didn't move. The knocking continued, patient, rhythmic, like whoever was outside knew we couldn't go anywhere. The voice spoke again, right outside the door. I just wanted to see how long it would take you to notice. Police arrived about 5 minutes later, though it felt like an hour. When they searched the store, they found no one. No broken doors. No forced entry. But aisle 12 was destroyed. Cans ripped off shelves. Boxes torn open. And written across the aisle floor in spilled sugar and flour were 3 words. Still open for me. The police reviewed footage from earlier that night. The man had entered at 11:58 p.m. He walked straight to aisle 12. And stood there. Waiting. For over an hour. Without moving once. No one ever identified him. The store closed permanently 6 months later after multiple overnight break-ins with no suspects. I don't shop late anymore. And I never stay in a building after it closes. Because sometimes someone else doesn't leave when you think they do.